Hello everyone, and welcome back to Inside the Salesforce Ecosystem, the podcast where we dive deep with the people, partnerships and stories that make this ecosystem so unique. And today I am delighted to be joined by the one and only Michael J. Fox. Michael, welcome.
Hi.
So, for anyone listening who doesn't know you yet, can you introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, so I'm Michael J. Fox. I'm the solutions engineer here at PDF Butler. But I'm not the Michael J. Fox.
Are you sure? That's clarification, you are not the Michael J. Fox.
It is usually the first 5-10 minutes of any meeting that we have.
Back to the future conversation.
Yeah, which is fine. You know, otherwise it's about the weather or you know what time people.
And in a dreary Manchester, that's quite sad.
There's not much to say.
Not much to say. Cool then. So, how would you describe your role as a solution engineer at PDF Butler, and then what does your typical day look like?
Yeah, so I am here to help customers understand what we do and also help them understand how we can help exactly with the problems that they face. So we've got a bunch of different solutions. They can work together, they can work separately, and they're really customizable. As with most of the things in the Salesforce ecosystem, they're not just out-of-the-box solutions, you know, and that you kind of take it as they come. So we do demonstrations of our products, but we also do proof of concepts of our products to say exactly how they could be tailored, and we've got loads of examples of that. So my days are a mix of those demonstrations, preparing proof of concepts for people, having just calls with customers, you know, initial calls or with existing customers about how they can use more of our solutions, and then a bunch of other stuff like this, or like doing the videos on our website. The solutions engineer role is ever expanding. There's always more things to do.
Yeah, and people may recognise your voice. Now they've got a face to the voice from some of the PDF Butler videos that are out there on the website and on YouTube, etc. as well.
Yeah, it's. I think at every company I've worked for, they've had me. I was on the telephone system at one place. Press one. You have to record every, like, you're 12th in the queue, and then I have to hang up and ring again and go, you're 13th in the queue.
No.
And
how many? What was the max?
I think it went up to 40,
okay.
And then you just had to record one that said, "We'll be with you as soon as possible." That was a pain. This is much easier, you know, with tech and YouTube. It's faster these days.
Oh, okay. So we're in Lisbon as we're recording this at our sort of EU offsite. What do you personally enjoy about getting the team together? Because obviously we are a remote first company, so we're spread all across the world. But yeah, what do you enjoy about actually getting some of the team together? Yeah,
so working worldwide and working remote is fun and nice. I get to work across a lot of different time zones, you know, working that out. I've come to do quite well, but getting everyone, I suppose, in the same time zone in one place at least once a year means that we can have conversations much easier. You know, you can easily just grab someone for a minute. I had like a one-to-one with all of our territory managers today to make sure that I'm working in the way that they want. And we can do, you know, sticky note sessions. We can do roundtables in a way that if you've got this many people on a Teams call, you know, you don't even just fit on one screen. And it is harder to sort of put your hand up or just voice an idea than it would be, because you're easily distracted. You're on a device which has your work on, and there's notifications and there's emails and there's other stuff coming in where, in person at least once a year is great for us.
Yeah, and I think also the other thing that I really enjoy about it is actually bring everyone together to just like at dinners or at lunches. We're just chatting, maybe not even non-work stuff, you know, just talking about general life, and a bit of work drops in, but I think that's nice as well. Yeah,
and we get that because we go to so many events. You do usually have a dinner, but again, that's not the whole team. There's definitely people who wouldn't come to events who do come to this, and then this is pretty much the only time I spend time with them.
Yeah, and I think it dawned to me, because I go to so many events across the globe, I see nearly everybody at some point, but actually, like, the first night we got here and had dinner, actually I sat back for a minute and just watched everybody interacting, and actually it was great to see that everyone's chatting, because there was still maybe half the team who still hadn't actually met each other face to face. So I think that's the next step is to get the whole global team together. So we just need to close some more deals, and then we can get the whole global team together somewhere at some point. So I know that before you joined PDF Butler, you worked as a solution engineer in other companies, but what pulled you sort of into the PDF Butler world?
Yeah, so before I was in anything Salesforce, I was a solution engineer at an accountancy software company or a couple of different ones, but all accountancy software, the demonstration that you do, could be replaced by a video pretty easily because it's compliant software. You're going to put your trial balance in here and accounts come out the other end. It's something that's doing most of the work for you, and they just wanted to see that it would work, and they'd ask for one little change. You couldn't really tailor the demonstration. Yeah. Anything in Salesforce, and definitely with PDF Butler, any demonstration that we do, I'm looking how we can tie it into what they do. Yep. We've got as many different use cases as we can to try and match our solutions to people's problems, and PDF Butler is definitely one of those tools that bridges all these little gaps that Salesforce has, in what I think is an interesting way, and therefore every day is different. Yep. There's never kind of two demonstrations or calls that go the same, and it's always interesting for people to allow us into their sandboxes to see how their kind of solutions are set up, and how we can kind of help them. So that it does interest me to kind of learn about that stuff as well.
So it was almost like you said. So it was like the variety of it that you've now obviously potentially was there. You probably maybe thought it was there, but actually after being here for a while now, it's like it's definitely there.
Yeah, because one day you're talking to an accountancy practice, and the next day you're talking to an accountancy practice when you work there. But in Salesforce world, all of our clients are different. You're talking to a manufacturer, and then it's financial services, then it's tech, and they all use things in different ways. And some want to do contracts, some want to do invoices, some want to do a document you've never heard of. So yeah, it is interesting.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. I'm going to jump back a bit into maybe a slightly earlier career path. Now, we've talked about it, but I understand obviously that at one point you were a comedian. I'm not going to ask you to do a 5 minutes on stage now, but
thanks.
But what made you decide that maybe that career path wasn't for you?
It's I was young, so this is I was like 18 years ago, like half my life ago. Straight out of university, I did acting and media performance, and one of the parts of the course was to do stand-up. So you did like 10 weeks, and you put together your own kind of 5-minute set, and it went well enough that I was like invited to go to other places in the UK, which was great. It was great fun. It's like, oh wow, 50 quid for 5 minutes is a good rate of pay at that age. Yeah. But you only work 10 minutes a week, and you've got to travel to those gigs. And then it's petrol money, and then you can't drink because you've got to drive home, and then you're also working Friday and Saturday night, which is, I was young and I just thought, well, maybe this isn't a full-time career for me. Yeah. So I went into the like a career, and some other kind of acting bits as I went through. But it's difficult to make it good.
Yeah, and obviously we know from your voice, we've spoken about it before, but obviously you do some of the audiobooks as well back in the day as well.
Yeah, so I auditioned for an audiobook. I didn't realise what it was, but it was one of the saucier ones.
Yeah, okay, a risque one.
Yeah, it turned out as I sort of got halfway through the script, and I thought, well, I've half recorded this, I'll finish it, and she liked it, and it's a 13-hour audiobook. With some scenes that you couldn't. Well, I say you couldn't play to your parents, but then my mum wanted to listen to it, and she did, and I was surprised. I couldn't sit through that. No. It was a lovely book. It was probably it was like a sort of fantasy thriller about the Crimean War. No. It's not the sort of thing I'd usually listen to. Yeah. And then I did 10 others in this very similar vein. I sort of found a niche.
You were typecast at that point.
I was, yeah. It's. Again, it's fun to do. It's fun to read, I suppose, other people's words and do all the different voices.
And get paid for it, I suppose. You're getting paid to read books.
Well, and you get paid. It's a higher rate than you get paid per finished hour because you have to edit it yourself. Yeah. 30
hours. So self-editing.
Yeah, you had to do the lot. It was like Uber for audiobooks.
But Stephen Fry doesn't do his own
No,
self-editing.
I think he's usually too busy. Yeah, they have people to do that. But at first, I didn't really have a studio, so it was literally just me with a duvet over my head.
Oh, okay.
And it was in the summer, so it was absolutely roasting in there.
So I guess a bridge to that. So from those experiences, both obviously the comedian stuff, and then also the audiobooks and the acting stuff. Do you see that you use those skills today now with maybe in demos or when you're talking to customers?
Yeah, I think so. I think I'm very lucky to have had the education that I did, and in singing, acting, dancing. I'm not doing much singing or dancing on a call, but definitely
not unless
acting.
requested.
No, yeah. But definitely, acting and speaking in public isn't something that phases me now. And a video call can feel like that. When they first came in, I think people could clam up, on what could be a room of people watching them. So whether it's in person, kind of events and doing things on stage, I've always been okay doing that. And definitely, I think it's key to any job to be able to communicate with people.
Yep.
I wouldn't say I'm sort of playing a character, but we've all got like a work mode, that's different to how you are at home. And I think I probably turn that on a little bit on calls with people. So yeah.
I think you're right. I think there's a moment where you've got that half an hour, that hour where you have to sort of turn it up to 11, almost the personality to get it across. Like you can't be like that all day, I think, unless you're probably on something you shouldn't be. But I think you've got to be able to just turn it up that little bit, because sometimes the person who's receiving the demo, it's the first time they've ever seen it. So to them it's brand new. Yeah,
and exactly. But you also don't want to make it just a show. I'm sure I could do a 30 minutes on PDF Butler and everything we do, but again, just replace me with a video, right? You've got to ask those questions and give people the space to explain themselves, but not put everything on them either. Make it into a conversation and make it into a scoping call and a discovery and a demonstration all at once, so that they're going to get something out of the meeting as well.
So change of subject a little bit. So on this podcast, we're talking to a lot of people in the community, and we talk about the Salesforce community. So what's your opinion on the Salesforce community, and how maybe have you seen it change over the years as well?
Yeah, so I worked at a couple of different implementation partners before working here, and I suppose events that we went to there, there was never kind of a booth. We'd go to a Salesforce World Tour, but implementation partners, probably have a different idea of it, because what you're going to say on a booth, hey, yeah, we can help you with Salesforce. So the times that I kind of went with them, you were kind of fishing out, people at Salesforce and maybe some prospects, but definitely the community angle when we go to events is, hey, we're PDF Butler, and you can get out of us in 5 minutes here what it might take half an hour, another time. And they can get that from so many different, booths, and the kind of the community spirit that there is between people that we see at every event is really nice. And I think in the last couple of years, these events have ramped up. They've gone from kind of 1 a year to like 2 a year, but and the numbers of people coming are still the same at each event. So I think there's definitely always scope to do the kind of smaller community events and these larger events. And I don't know anything like it, in the tech world. I don't know of other, tech solutions that could offer this sort of event and this sort of scale.
Yeah, I mean, I've done some of the other big tech vendors out there, and I think Salesforce do it the best. Yeah. I think from the community and the glitz and the glamour of it and that sort of side of thing, I think they do it better than most out there. So interesting point you mentioned there as well. So talking about sort of SIs, etc. Now you've done both sides, the SIs and the product world from us as an ISV, without sort of having to say which one is your favourite. Which one is your favourite in terms of which is sort of is, I guess again, variety probably plays a part to that as well.
Yeah, and I think when I worked at Ignito, they work across quite a wide range. So quite often, what SIs had to do was get the SE to help out Salesforce to actually just sell Salesforce at all, because at certain levels, and if SEs are busy, it was difficult to get resource. So they'd be doing their own demos, or they'd want us for a webinar or for a piece of video content. So that was always interesting to me. And at that point, I was also just always learning, and it was a great way to kind of do it. I suppose what SIs provide is that sometimes people want Salesforce and they know they're going to need these other bits, but they don't know what. So they're asking for them to find them. And that's a lot of what we do, I suppose, with SIs, that we try and make ourselves top of mind and make them understand that what we can offer to make that solution complete.
So coming back to the sort of the day-to-day sort of thing, what do you enjoy, I guess, most about working with Salesforce customers and our other partners as well?
Yeah, I suppose any Salesforce customer has made a big choice already. They've gone for something that's going to last.
Yep.
They've gone for something that isn't the cheapest. So that it's something that you're going to have phases with. There's going to be a phase one, which is maybe the first problem they come to us with, but you can always talk about the future phases that there's going to be to take some of our other solutions or combine them, or link into other things that they do. So there is always more, and it is always different. There is that just kind of variety across the spectrum, and even if you are only talking to a particular vertical, they'll always be different as well. It's really interesting to me, I think, to even 5 years in, I'm still learning. And there are always new things and new ways of doing the same thing.
So, final question, because obviously we've got loads of Spanish, Portuguese wine and food to eat tonight. So I guess if someone was considering a career change into tech or even solution engineering, so what advice would you give them? Yeah,
so I came from sales first. It was a tech sales job, and then I moved into tech field sales, and then it interested me so much, and I found I was kind of doing the job of SEs myself because I couldn't get the always help that I needed. So then I sort of transitioned to that, and I think you can also do it from the other side. You could do it from a technical aspect and move into it from that direction. But I think you need both disciplines. I don't think it's something you could start, first job to be solution engineer, because you are doing two jobs at once. You're having to match problems to solutions, so you're kind of selling the product, but you're also doing things from a technical angle as well. So I would suggest anyone that this was your final kind of calling. I don't know which is harder. I suppose start with sales and see if you can get into the tech side, or start the tech side and then try and prove yourself that you can do the sales bit. Okay, fantastic. So let's go and drink and eat now, yes, and have that Portuguese food, etc. But thank you for joining us. It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you. Thanks, Luke.
No worries.